Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but as always, we want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director, and I highly recommend that you use them too. So take the next couple of minutes, listen to our commercial messages, then listen to our interview, and then go and visit these sponsors, see what they can do for you. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Huddle for their support of the podcast. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just loved all the tools that Huddle provided us. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Your students and a lot of their parents are on social media. And if you're not creating and posting content to celebrate their accomplishments and promote your program, you're really missing out. Go to Gipper.com. They're going to show you how to create world-class content for social media in seconds. And it's so easy, even I can do it. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made easy. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, uploading scores, rosters, communicating with your school, communicating with your state. How about athletic eligibility and clearance? Who doesn't do that every day? Home Campus does all of these and more, does it better, does it faster. All you have to do to get started is go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Hometown Ticketing, it's digital ticketing that offers more. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Snap Raise. If you've ever been disappointed with a fundraising program or platform, you need to stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school, tremendous success. Coaches loved it, parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, look no more. Snapraise.com is where you should be. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really neat way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and brag about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Make sure you visit them today. We'd like to thank the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. This affordable 20-month online master's program focuses entirely on interscholastic administration. When you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you'll have completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses to go towards your RAA or your CAA. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. And we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but it's typically from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that small group, but they're also going to connect you to the other 98% that supports your program. And that information, it comes back from the survey, is incredibly valuable, especially when you're talking with that frustrated parent or maybe your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Got a special bonus for you today. Our guest is from the great state of Oregon, just like me. We're going to be visiting with Jason Baseden. He is the Director of Athletics at Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. I think anybody in let's say private independent schools, or even maybe even in education at all, has heard of Exeter Academy. Jason has an incredible background as an athlete, as a coach, and now as an AD, and we're excited to have him on the show. So, Jason, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thank you, and looking forward to the episode.
Okay. Well, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So, give us that quick bio: where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own high school and college days, and then we'll take our first break. But what's the Jason Baseden origin story?
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, so I was actually born in Germany. My father was in the military, and so I was born out in Frankfurt, Germany, on a military base. And shortly after that, we moved back to Oregon. My father was a student athlete at Oregon State track and field, and so we went back to finish his education while we were there. And so I grew up in Oregon, and shortly after we moved down right next to the University of Oregon. And so I was fortunate in the early 70s to be playing at the University of Oregon's Hayward Field, and the long jump pit was my sandbox, and my brother and I used to jump off the back of Hayward Field into the pole vault pit. So I was constantly surrounded by track and athletics growing up, and then just got into basically football, basketball, and track. And through high school, I played all three of those sports, and then at the varsity level. And then I was a All-American in track and field. Had a smart coach. I thought I was a sprinter, and he moved me up to the 800. And as a sophomore in high school, I ended up getting third in state. And then the next year, he made me run the 1500, which was the same as a marathon. And I ended up becoming a top 10 in the country at 1500 meters. And so I was fortunate to, have some college opportunities in track. And at the time, St. John's University in New York had a men's track team. And so I decided to go to St. John's. I was really interested in the big city world. A lot of my friends were going to University of Oregon, Oregon State. But I was always, fascinated with big cities and tall buildings and that sort of thing. And, I knew the Big East really well at that time because of basketball in the 80s. So that's what got me out there. And I went out there to study communications. So that
I want to go back a little bit to your high school days there in Beaverton. Now, anybody from Oregon, Beaverton's one of the older schools in the state. Very storied tradition. What was it like for you as a high school athlete? I know Beaverton was the original school, and then you had Sunset, and then Jesuit. I'm sure was always there. But what were some of the rivalries that you remember from your days at Beaverton High?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for us at the time, it started in middle school. So we had middle school teams that competed, and we knew like who the middle schools funneled into which high school. And so we knew who our competitors were going to be, from like which one other middle school fed into Beaverton High School. And that was a big competition. But then we knew the schools that were going to Sunset. Jesuit was a little bit different. It was our one private school where, they had a very competitive athletics and competed in our league, which was called the Metro League. And, Jesuit had called and tried to see if I'd be interested in joining them. But at the time, I was not interested in an all boys school. And also we didn't really have the money for that sort of thing. But great rivalries. They were the biggest high schools in the state. Athletics plays a really big part. As you mentioned, Beaverton's the home of Nike. So there's a very athletic minded community there and very competitive athletics. And I feel like, just growing up in that environment really, something I think when I look back, I took for granted. But just a lot of great coaching around, and just a lot of great athletic leadership around, from my athletic director, Nick Robertson,
Oh yeah.
to, our coaches. Jim Archer was my track coach, who really, created a path for me in track and field. And so, there's a lot of great athletes. And as you mentioned, now there are a number of new high schools there. I know Cameron Brink comes from one of the new high schools that's there. And so just really good sport-minded community surrounding Beaverton and the Portland metropolitan area.
Oh, absolutely. I was still in Oregon during that time. Um, you mentioned that you got to play on the we'll say the hallowed grounds of Hayward Field as a collegian. Did you ever get to come back and compete? Any memories jump to mind from your college days?
Yeah, unfortunately, competing at St. John's, we were primarily East Coast, so we competed all around the East. The only time we came out west was for Mount Sac relays, but I was able to come back and run in a couple of competitions there over the summer, during some summer all-comers meets, that sort of thing. But yeah, I was never able to come back and compete. We did, I believe, compete. University of Oregon came out to Penn relays a couple times while I was running, so that was always interesting to see and get a chance to see some of the coaches that I knew from those days.
Oh yeah, got to be some great memories there. For our listeners, our guest today is Jason Baseden. Tremendous background in athletics. We're going to dive deeper into that in our next segment. He's currently the director of athletics at Phillips Exeter Academy, and that's in Exeter, New Hampshire. Let's go and take that first break, but we're coming back with more, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Huddle for all their support for our podcast. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to the highest level. Our student athletes loved Huddle too. Actually, our parents loved Huddle because of the streaming. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thank you to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. They're going to have you creating world-class marketing content in seconds to promote your athletes and celebrate your teams. And it's so easy, even I can do it. Your student athletes and a lot of their parents are on social media. And if you're not putting out content, you're really missing a great opportunity to promote your school. Gipper.com. It's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college athletic programs. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com, mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. That's Gipper.com. Welcome back, everyone, to our visit with Jason Baseden, the Director of Athletics at Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. Jason, you took us up through your college days at St. John's. I know you've done a lot of traveling before you came to Exeter. Can you share that journey with our listeners now?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have like a sort of different route to this role. And back in the early 2000s, so I ended up getting a degree in communications, and then I went into television and moved down to Los Angeles and was working in television in Los Angeles for Universal Television and Film, and did that for a number of years. And then had an opportunity to go back to New York, and in New York I actually worked at Discovery Channel in an advertising sales capacity. And then an interesting opportunity presented itself abroad, and this was in Paris, France, and this was working on the Tour de France. And so I worked on the Tour de France back in the Lance years, early 2000s. As what's called a stage manager. So basically I was a liaison between the producers and directors and the on-air talent, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin at the time. And while in France, I randomly met a guy who happened to be the dean of students at the American School in Paris. And he knew I was there. I was working in television. He knew I had an athletic background after we got to know each other. And he invited me to meet their athletic director. And this was at the American School in Paris. And there I met Han Hogan, a very experienced. He'd been an international school athletic director for about 20 years at that point, a Dutch gentleman. And he he had talked to me about coaching. And so I was doing a lot of freelance television work, and started coaching track at American School in Paris. So I would, do my work during the day, and then towards the afternoon hours, I would get on my little scooter and head over to the American School of Paris and started coaching. And I realized that I absolutely loved working in youth sport. And I'll be honest, growing up, I never thought of myself of working back in schools. I wasn't a huge fan of schools and everything at the time, but being able to share some of my experiences and expertise with the younger student population, and the feedback I received from them was a huge energizer for myself. And so then I started coaching girls basketball there. And so the American School in Paris is part of the interscholastic sports tournament. And so this was basically the capital cities in Europe all have international schools, and they had a league. They compete against each other. And so the International School of Brussels, which was the largest of those international schools, was looking for an athletic director. And I had never been an athletic director before. I'd certainly been involved in athletics as a team captain for 2 years in college. I worked with their athletic director. And clearly I worked with Han at the American School in Paris, but they had a school leader, Kevin Bartlett, who wanted to take a chance. And what he really liked about me was my background in marketing and communications from the television world, because he recognized, sport, a big part of the sport is public relations on campus. And so after that, after the Americans coaching there and doing television work for 4 years, I had an opportunity to be the athletic director at the International School of Brussels. And so from there, I headed up to Brussels and was the athletic director there for 7 years. It's a school of about 1,800 students from about 90 different countries. And it's a day school, so you really get to know all the different cultures, and you get to see sport and educational athletics from a very different perspective when you see it from a non-North American perspective. And so I feel like that was a huge asset for me, and certainly how it's helped me in managing today.
Yeah, I want to dive into some of your marketing perspectives, but you were no stranger to athletics. I mean, obviously, but there's an expression, I think we use it in our profession, and it could be used in any profession, but the phrase is, you don't know what you don't know. So coming in as a new AD, what were some things that you found out that you didn't know about the job?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost is you can never assume. I came in with a lot of assumptions. But also when I look at my background, my sport background is primarily North American. And now when I'm sitting there and I'm talking to an Indian family or an African family or an Asian family, or a European family, sports are very different, and they come from a different mindset. So I learned very quickly that I had to listen. I had to be in a position of listening a lot more, and not try to impose necessarily just my knowledge base on educational athletics, but I really needed to spend a lot of time listening and getting to understand the community and learning the community.
Boy, you are so right. You made me, you reminded me of one of my experiences. I was an athletic director at an independent school in, Miami, South Miami, and probably over half of our clientele were, Hispanic, Caribbean, South American, and we our administration was trying to build excitement about the homecoming football game. And our parents had no concept about what homecoming was and the tradition and the history. And we literally kind of walked them through the history of homecoming. And then they got really excited about it. But yeah, absolutely. Um, Looking at those years that you spent at the Belgium school, um, can you think of a moment or moments where the light came on, or you just said, hey, this is how I want to do things, or this is why, I want to be in education-based athletics? Any big moment come to mind?
Um, I can't necessarily think of a specific moment, but there was definitely a time, I want to say probably after 3 years in the role, where I realized that this was going to be it for me. Because you have to keep in mind, I had a career change in my early 30s. And so at about that moment, I realized I needed to invest more and develop my toolbox a lot more, and really have a more of an emphasis on professional development, and really trying to um, truly understand what it is to be in this role, so that I can be as impactful to as many students and coaches and communities as possible. Um, and a lot of that just stemmed from the feedback I received from students. I when you have alumni that come back and they talk to you about how you've been able to impact their lives in a positive way, that's a driver. That's way bigger than a paycheck. And so that was one of the reasons, for example, I went back to get more of an athletic administrative education, because I knew this was going to be part of my future, and I wanted to invest obviously in myself, but I wanted to be much better at my job.
Boy, what a great observation, self-observation. Athletic directors, we love to do professional development for our coaches and help them get better. So many times we don't get a chance to do it for a number of reasons. But you mentioned a key ingredient for any profession, but I think particularly in ours is that continuing, ongoing, lifelong education of getting better as an AD, so we can do a better job with our students and our coaches. Great transition to what's going to be our next segment. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. But for our listeners, we're going to be back with more from Jason Baseden. He's the Director of Athletics at the Phillips Exeter Academy. That's in Exeter, New Hampshire. So let's take that break. We'll be back with more on the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thank you to our good friends at Home Campus for their support. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, uploading scores and rosters, communicating with your coaches, your parents, your kids, communicating with your entire state association. How about athletic clearance and eligibility? Who doesn't work on that every single day? Well, Home Campus does all of these things and more, does it better and does it faster, and gives you a lot more time back in your schedule. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We want to say thank you to Snap Raise. Have you ever been frustrated and disappointed with a fundraising platform or effort? You need to stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We also want to say thank you to Hometown Ticketing. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more, but I'm going to. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team is going to help you set up and sell tickets online, not just for athletics, but for things like school plays, concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part: every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. It's digital ticketing that offers more. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Jason Baseden. He is the Director of Athletics at Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. He's also a graduate of the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. Now, if you're a regular listener, you hear me mention the Ohio University's program. They are a sponsor for us, but I also have a direct connection. My assistant athletic director is a graduate of the Ohio University program and just raves about the experience. Also allowed him to knock off 11 NIAAA leadership training courses. James is also a graduate of the Ohio University program, if I didn't mention that. And James, Jason, I'd like you to share a little bit about your experience. There's a lot of great programs out there. There's a lot of great graduate programs out there. What drew you to the Ohio University program, and what are some of the reasons that it was so good for you?
Yeah, I did a lot of research into a number of the programs, and basically what my research told me that Ohio was probably the most complete program. And there were plenty of successful examples of alum from this program, very successful at all levels of athletic administration, all the way through collegiate to folks who are working in professional sports. And so I went through that process. And as I mentioned before, I wanted to invest in myself, and so went through the process, and happened. I was actually in China when I found out that I was accepted into the program, and so that was pretty exciting. And then it was everything that I had hoped to be from a program. Now, I believe a little bit unique at the time within the program, because I was the one international student at the moment. So we had a number of online conversations with our cohort, and I always had to try to figure out a time that would work, because I was a number of hours away from those in my cohort, but they were very understanding. And it was just really a successful program, and got an opportunity to take a number of the NIAAA courses. And one course really stood out to me, and this was a course that was on understanding the different personalities. That I find has truly helped me, probably more than any class I've had in all of my education. Just recognizing that there's not a personality that exists that you won't have to face or manage or have communication with in this role. And it just really helped me come with a more empathetic mindset in dealing with all things educational athletics. But outstanding program. The alum, they support each other. I get to the national conference, I see some fellow alum, and Aaron Wright, who runs the program, he's been an exceptional leader, and somebody who's just always looking to connect us with other folks in our industry. And so it's definitely, you feel like you're part of a family when you come out of that program. And that's what I was looking for as I went into that program.
Well, I've talked to a lot of graduates of the program, and it's just so consistent across the board. The flexibility that the program allows. And for you at the time being an international AD, I can imagine, Zoom conferences were probably kind of tricky, but also the collegiality and the connections with your, fellow graduates, your fellow students. It's just really, really impressive to hear it time and time again. You mentioned the challenging personalities course, um, and your word empathetic. Having that, whether it's a frustrated kid, a coach, or very oftentimes a parent. I know you don't get frustrated parents at Exeter ever. Um, having, and this was something that course gave me. I think finally, late in my career, to just it gave me the ability, the wisdom, the perspective, if you will, to just shut up and listen. And not try to, they've been talking for 30 seconds and I had already figured out 16 different solutions to a problem that didn't even exist. Just listen and let them vent. Um, Question for you. In the courses that you took through the Ohio program, again, you grew up in the American system, if you will, high school and college, so you weren't foreign to those some of those ideas. But at the time, you're an international school AD. How much application did you feel you were getting from the various courses that worked for you in the international setting? And then also, now that you're back in the States, do you feel you're utilizing that information um, to to in a satisfactory way? Because you talked about your desire to improve in professional development. That was about a 16-point question there.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I fully understand. Um, I would say from the perspective, so this is one thing just for your listeners, like my background as actually being an employed athletic administrator has been in international schools and in private boarding schools. And so just to kind of share that perspective, I would say about 65% of the NIAAA courses are relatable to what we do and experience. The other is very much more related to a public school, United States public school athletic director experience. So there's certainly, there's a number of the courses. It doesn't matter where you work. These are just, giving you a better understanding. If you're working in budgets and those sorts of things, budgets are budgets. It doesn't matter where you're at. Rules and regulations can vary. If you're in an international situation or in a boarding private school situation, but either way, all of the courses help you have a better understanding. So it's very informational for me to know what our crosstown public school athletic director is dealing with. And we collaborate. So even if you're at a private school, you still have collaboration with your local public schools. And so 100% of the information is useful. About 65 of what I took is actually applicable to my specific job, if that helps.
No, I think that's a great observation. And again, for somebody who's new to the world of education-based athletics and the NIAAA, there are multiple levels of courses. There's introductory base levels, a lot of legal courses, but then you also have the 600 and 700 level courses, and there's a separate but connected international curriculum where people who are working in an international school can take the same content, but it's been created by international school ADs, and it leads to a separate international school certification if you're so inclined. Great stuff. Looking ahead to Austin and our national conference in December, you have any courses already circled on your calendar that you're going to try to knock off?
Not yet, but I will certainly be there. I feel like the event is always, if anything, it's a great motivator. And when you sit in on the sessions, you always get something out of it. You could go to the same session the following year and you're going to learn something new. And so I have certainly not selected. Part of that is schedule related. It's an interesting time for us sometimes. So I have to pick my days accordingly, but I will absolutely be there, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. Well, no, definitely. We'll look forward to hopefully connecting down there. That'll be great.
Yeah.
We're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Jason to share some of his best practices at Exeter and hopefully pass on some nuggets to you listeners. So let's take that break, but we're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. You just heard personal testimony about the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration, and we're proud to give them a shout out again. This is an affordable 20-month, completely online master's program that focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. When you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree from Ohio University, you will have completed 11 NIAAA leadership training courses that can go towards your RAA or your CAA. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We'd like to say thank you to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thank you to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and brag a little bit about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Jason, one of the things that we really try to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are some things that you do at Exeter that you're particularly proud of that you would call best practices, and share with our listeners?
Yeah, I first and foremost will always start with safety. I make sure that our athletic training staff and we have our relationship is paramount to the overall success of our program. And so we work really close with our strength and conditioning coaches, our athletic trainer team, to make sure, number one, our coaches are educated. Everybody has a strong foundation in understanding concussion protocols, every sort of protocol, all of our AEDs and all of our emergency action plans are understood, and the locations are well known. So I think you have to start any athletic program with a strong foundation of health and safety. Outside of that, I truly believe that we're unique individuals on high school campuses, and by that I mean our relationships go beyond the walls of our institution. Our relationships are with other institutions. Our school's brand often is presented to most of the external community via the athletics. And so always having a mindset on who we are, who our character is, what's our brand, and making sure that we represent ourselves externally is very important. And so always meeting with our coaching staff, preseason meetings, mid-season meetings, postseason meetings. These things have to happen, and having our mission and ethos fully understood by all who represent our program, all leadership in our program, from captains to obviously coaches, is very important. We want to make sure that we are cohesive in our approach to educational athletics from our school standpoint. And then I really think that in terms of best practices, listening, having a great ear is probably the best thing, or it is the number one asset that anyone has, the ability to sit and listen. And then second to that is patience, the ability to sit and listen, and not, even if you feel like you have an immediate response, buy yourself some time, because you will undoubtedly think of more and better ways to answer or solve challenges that lie within that initial issue. And also make sure that you fully understand who the people are that work in the facilities of your institution, who works in the dining hall, who are all those people on your campus that often the school would never survive without them, but they also don't always have a face within the community. Get to know those people and make sure that they know who you are, and then they know that you know who they are. Those folks will be your greatest assets. So I try to lead with that. Obviously, we can get into more details, but if we can focus on safety, and also who we are collectively, and make sure as an institution and as a program we're following the mission of our institution, and then paying attention to the people, then we're in a great position. We've positioned ourselves to be successful. Of course, there are, then, as I said before, you get into the minutia of it all, but if you can create that as a foundation, then you're in a great position to be successful.
Well, I mean, those are great. Well, I know we're going to do the toolbox next, but those are great tools for any athletic director. Exeter has been around for a long time, got, tremendous, history and tradition. As an athletic director, what are some things that you do intentionally to make sure that, you're honoring and recognizing the tradition, but also, looking ahead and, being innovative? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is, I've learned a lot about this institution since I arrived here. So the beginning of high school sports started here, and physical education, one of the original schools that actually started high school sports. And we also have alums such as Amos Alonzo Stagg, who was with Naismith, was the one who created the game of basketball as 5-on-5. The one that had the forward pass in football, the person that invented the jump shot. These are all alums, and so the interesting thing is, up until more recently, the athletic director role at this school and other very old boarding schools has been a rotating position of physical education teachers. So I'm sort of, at least in the modern era, the first full-time athletic director here. And so we've had a lot of change in a short period of time. And what I've tried to bring to Phillips Exeter are a lot of the things I actually learned at Ohio University and at the national conference, and those sorts of things that I've experienced in previous institutions. But this is a very high academic institution. So this is, if you go off of ratings, it's the #1 rated academic institution in America. And so it brings a unique set of student athletes, and also a unique set of challenges because we do have a lot of PhDs in the teaching side, and athletics, for many can potentially get in the way of academics. And so that's where the public relations job comes in. And I try to spend a lot of my time sharing why educational athletics is much better and creates a more holistic education for our student community. But we've been able to do it. We've been able to do some great things here. But we also, we have resources. And so I don't for a minute take my position for granted. I feel very blessed to be in the role I'm in. I feel very blessed to be at the institution I'm at because of our resources. But we do operate more like a Division III college model than we would a typical high school. And I say that by meaning, I have 2 assistant athletic directors, and we have pretty much a full set of aquatics directors, equipment managers, strength and conditioning coaches, and so it's different. It's different, and a lot of these really old New England prep boarding schools, which I never heard of in my life growing up in Oregon. I didn't even hear about these schools until I was in my 30s, pretty much. But it's an interesting place because of its history. Sometimes the history wants to hold you back. But I'm fortunate that I have a principal here who is an ex-student athlete and believes in educational athletics and the power of educational athletics for a community. And so he's really behind not only myself, but all of our student athletes in their support and pursuit of the best versions of themselves.
Boy, that is so true. Having the support of the administration, and you talked about the faculty, too, that can be a challenge. Again, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
In the last couple years, we've been coming out of COVID. That used to be a talking point when we first started the podcast is, what are you doing about COVID?
Yeah.
Now those students that came in as freshmen, have graduated. What's your observation of that group of students or student athletes, and even the ones that are just following? Are we changed in a good way? Are we still struggling with it? We meaning our profession. What are your thoughts on that? Because again, you brought up the whole academic issue.
Yeah, it's COVID was a challenge. I started this role actually 4 years ago, and so when I came in here, we were pretty isolated, and also when being in a boarding school, we weren't able to send the students just home like once they were at school. So we had a lot of rules and regulations. But I'd say I think it's going to take us a while to get through the impacts of COVID on youth. And what I mean by that is I've noticed students to have less resilience than potentially in the past. And so I think, our jobs going forward, the life skill development that we teach, and the social emotional learning, I think those are things that will be and need to be at the forefront of what we do, developing our student athletes. Social emotional skills are they're just paramount. It doesn't matter what our students are doing, or our coaches for that matter. I feel like things are different, and COVID definitely changed the landscape of all of us, of the world that we live in. And so the social emotional piece is definitely something we're investing a lot more dollars and time into. Professional training, potentially bringing in you know, and experts. There's a lot of high anxiety out there that we want to try to support. And students are also, you know, sports specialization is their identities are tied to specific, their successes or their deemed successes within their specific sports. And so we just need to put a lot more effort and energy into that area of focus, along with the strength training and better understanding of you know, how to be a better athlete. You know, we've actually brought in a lot of science too. We use force plates here as part of not only our strength training program, but an injury prevention and the ability to bring students back. We're also using Kinotech for movements and doing baseline studies on all of our students. So if they are injured, we have their baseline numbers in order to go back and bring them back to where, at least to where they were. Just help our athletic trainers and our strength coaches just that take that guessing game out. That gives us a lot of different data points to get our students back to play.
Oh, well, I love that. I'm gonna have to get you and your strength coach on one of our Tech Tuesday segments and share that. That sounds really cool.
Sure.
Uh, Jason, gosh, this has been so neat, you know, connecting with you, hearing about your program, but we're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director toolbox. Now, you certainly know your way around the world of athletic administration, but we're going to take our final break here from Athletic Surveys. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send a brand new athletic director out on the very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in the toolbox. So let's take that final break. And when we come back, we'll see what Jason Baseden puts in his new athletic director toolbox. We'd like to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. You know, athletic directors almost always get feedback, but a lot of time it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the other 98% that supports your program. And the information that comes back is incredibly valuable because it comes from everyone. And when you're sitting with that frustrated parent or student athlete, it's good to have that kind of data. It's also good to have when you're talking with your principal or maybe even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with Jason Baseden. He's the director of athletics at Phillips Exeter Academy. That's in Exeter, New Hampshire. Incredible background in athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Jason, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
So I led off with a few earlier, so I won't go back on those, but I would say a few things. One, fully understand your school policies. There are often some folks out there that are going to be looking deep into policies and conversations you're going to have, and you're going to want to really know your school or your league policies. Have a deep understanding of those, and you can get that information before your first day. Fully understand what those policies are. 2, I would highly suggest sitting down with whoever manages the school's budget. Understand, you know, if you could go over a previous year's budget with that individual, if it's a director of finance or whomever that might be at the institution, go over the previous year's budgets and try to understand what some of the previous challenges were to stay within that budget. If anything, try to have a monthly meeting. So at the end of the year, if you are over budget, which we often are, there's an understanding that the efforts were being made, and you definitely were working and striving to be, work within your budget. The third thing I would say is be the best advocate for your coaching staff. On occasion, your coaching staff, your coaches may be isolated. They may be isolated by parents. They may be isolated, by anybody. But coaches pay attention to athletic administration and how their fellow coaches are being treated or advocated for. So I always look to support your coaches, because they really are, they're the ones putting in the work, and we are here to make sure that they have what they need to provide the best experience for your student athletes. And the student athlete experience should always lead your decision making. You always want to make sure that your student athletes are getting a full positive experience, because that is what is going to be who your brand is when history speaks.
Boy, you probably see me scribbling all these down. All great ones. We don't. They're part of the top 20, but we don't hear them as often, and they're just so important. You mentioned, know your school's policies before you come in like a whirlwind and want to change something. And then you also mentioned budget, so critical. That can, your boss and your finance officer, they can be your best friend, or they can be at the other end of that extreme. So yeah, get to know them. All great stuff. Jason, we should have done this earlier, but we're going to do it now. If one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, and listeners, you got a tremendous resource here, or they just want to add you to their network. You talked about the importance of networking. Yeah. What's the best way they can get a hold of Jason Baseden?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, and think there's only 2 of us in the United States, and one of them's my cousin. So, and he's not an athletic director, so you could find me there. And also, I can give out my email address is J, and then my last name, which is Baseden, Baseden at exeter.edu. J Baseden at exeter.edu. And then last, I would say, you can follow Exeter Athletics, just as it said, EXETER Athletics, exeterathletics.com. And we use Gipper, for example, for our social media as well. And I noticed a number of your advertisers are also folks that we work with here at Phillips Exeter Academy. But I just want to say thank you for having me on the show. I really want to encourage all the new or young athletic directors. It's certainly it's a great profession, and you'll meet unbelievable people, all with the goal of developing our youth. And so keep it up. There are going to be moments where you're going to be like, why am I doing this, for sure? But those are a lot less than the benefits when you meet your alum one day, when they come back and fully recognize the power of what your program gave them.
Oh, absolutely. Great way to end. Thanks so much for sharing that. And again, listeners, you've got the contact information for Jason. And I love that you threw out your school's Twitter, Exeter Athletics on Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it. The other X. Okay. Jason, thanks again for sharing. All the best. Hope you have a great summer and fall. And let's definitely make plans, not just to connect at NIAAA, but also, I'm serious, I want to get you, your strength coaches or your strength staff back on for a Tech Tuesday and talk about that baseline training. I think it's a great idea and something that doesn't get mentioned enough.
All right, let's do it.
For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you and just remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day, sharing best practices and stories. So we hope you come back for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.